it was even worse because I was looking at it like I was doing a good thing when really I was forfeiting the stability of my business, and therefore how many lives was I affecting on my side. It was easy to make it look like a good thing until, the numbers are the numbers. And thankfully, like, I started with a financial background. Like, the numbers are where I would like to be. I did not start as a project manager. I didn't start as a builder. I started as a financial person. When you start digging into the numbers, you're going to find it. Like, I would think that it would be harder to hide something from a forensic accountant than it would be like a drug dog. Like, they can find anything that you've ever done. When those problems showed up and there was no getting away from it. But it also cleared up the plan of how to move forward a little bit better, because you could very realistically see where the problems are.
So before we get into this episode, I want to share something special with you. After organizing to scale so many businesses, the thing that I get asked about the most is, how can I scale with all of these tabs open in my brain? And so I created a free training on exactly how I organize to scale businesses in 90-day sprints. If you would like to get access, you can go to stacygray.com/scale. That's Stacy with an I, Gray with an A.com/scale.
Welcome to another episode of The Rooted Founder. I'm excited for this one. I am talking with Jeremy Melancon, and he is an incredible leader, entrepreneur, founder, and just a fun guy to know and be around. And we met several years ago and actually worked together a little bit in systemizing his business. And he has gone on to do such amazing things with his Turnkey Custom Home Building business. And we're going to talk through specifically how Profit First, a basically cash management system, business envelope system, has helped him scale his business from $4.5 million to $8.5 million over the last several years, when a lot of businesses in the industry were declining. So, Jeremy, I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So let's talk through what it felt like. So you got to 4.5, and then you hit somewhat of a ceiling, which is common. And just for everyone listening, good languaging when you feel like you hit a spot in your business where you're stuck, like the current infrastructure, the current team, the current way you're operating even as a leader is not working anymore. You're hitting a ceiling, and it's asking you to evolve as a leader, asking you to just determine new infrastructure. So when you got to 4.5, you were hitting a ceiling. What was that like for you? What did it feel like? What were you experiencing at that time?
Yeah, I think wherever your ceiling is, because I would imagine for different industries, it's different dollar amounts and things like that. But when you hit that first one, I almost feel like if you've made it to that first ceiling, you have something good to offer. You have something that the world wants. You have a reputation that has got you there, but you really need to protect, right? Because, with our brands, no matter what size we are, starting out of the gate, we have to protect that reputation. And it seems really easy. It seems like simple, like, yeah, just don't screw up. But when you hit that first ceiling, I think that that's a ceiling because at that point, you may have hired some help. You may have folks helping you be more of you, but you are still the one being you. And for us, that jump was, how can we show up as a brand and be the same that we were there yesterday without it being that person? I think that would be how I would describe that first ceiling is, I still have to produce the same. I still have to live up to this reputation, but it's not going to be me that you're meeting with. It's not going to be me that you're talking with or that's doing the things, and it all has to look the same.
Mm-hmm. I think that first ceiling is like, how do I duplicate myself? So when you hit that, how did you do it?
Yeah, so at first, because you're still doing the job, right? I sometimes I think if I could just hit pause and have 6 months to work on building my business, then risk on the business, in the business thing wouldn't be so hard. But you still have to show up and do the work, right? And there's a lot of different things there. There's advice coming out from everywhere. Some of it is really great advice. Some of it is advice that people have never done the thing that you're talking about doing. And sometimes those can be very real, trusted relationships, and they don't need to be giving advice that's not sound, right? So I would say the biggest part is that you're saying yes to the growth because the growth's there. That's why you get the ceiling, and you're still having to get that job done. And that turns into a fire. It doesn't give you a lot of time to work on your business. You're constant in your business. And then those fires start catching as problems, right? As hey, you have to go handle this. I have to go handle this. And then that doesn't get handled properly. And now you're being pulled away again. And it feels like a whirlwind. And a lot of times those mistakes are expensive. And then so for us, what happened was we got into a financial hole as a business because it was expensive to keep that reputation up. And so it was, I don't know, scary would be the one word that I would use probably. And thankfully we had a really great team and we were all really, really close. And we just laid it all out on the table one day and that, hey, this is the plan and this is what we're going to do. And we all kind of got together to do that.
One thing you said was that a lot of advice is coming at you. Like you're getting pulled in so many directions. A lot of advice is coming at you. And I've experienced that same thing. And it can be overwhelming. It could be also like you don't want to disappoint people by not taking their advice. So how did you sort through the advice to know what was going to be the thing that you're going to implement in your business?
I think in the beginning, you don't really, I didn't, maybe some other folks do, but part of building your business is the culture and the mission and the vision. And those are not just words that are in a book. They're real and they have a real value. But in the beginning, you're working, you don't have those. I didn't have those put into place. But you do still have a culture, right? You personally, you haven't shared it. And so your business can't go in that path. And I think that's a big part about having your brand be you instead of you having to physically be there. But don't falter from that, right? Don't do things that you know you shouldn't do. And if you can stay above board where you can make mistakes, but still look people in the eyes and talk about those mistakes, then it's a little bit easier, right? And I went and like tried to seek out that information. I didn't really look at it as good advice or bad advice because I didn't know. So I just went for all of it. There's a lot of folks that are in your life and in your corner, like I mentioned, that maybe very strongly telling you to do something or not to do it. And a lot of that is you're more scared for your friend or your kid or your loved one or something like that than you would be for yourself. So a lot of it, even if they may not be a scarcity minded person, a lot of the advice is scarcity minded because it's just protect yourself. Don't get out there. Don't do this. And it's like, well, how are you going to do anything if you do it like that? Right. So when you really go see books or podcasts or videos or even better, live events that have their own culture and their own groups and their own, like-minded people that you get in rooms with, at that point, you're getting out of that and you're going and finding that abundant mindset. And another thing is like, by the time someone is a coach or by the time someone has a business model very similar to yours, you've done the processes. You know that processes and cultures and things are important. And not only have you done it for yourself, but you've had to really clean up the holes because you're doing it for others or you're helping others through it. So seeking out that, not ignoring the advice, but seeking out a bunch of it, at some point, some of it starts to sound the same. And that's the direction that I just kind of kept going down, is like when the information sounds the same and I got a good feeling or a big response from that, or that helped come out of my business, then that's the direction I continue to be able to find that information out. I don't know if that answered the question of what you said.
Well, I feel like I would summarize it is very similar to systematizing a business. Is what you were doing was you were recognizing patterns. So the first ceiling you're hitting is, how do I duplicate myself? And then you're seeking advice. And in all that advice, you're recognizing pattern of what is similar in all of this advice and what can I actually apply in my business. And then you sat down with your team which is a courageous decision, because I have noticed a lot of leaders, what they do is they hit these ceilings and then they try to solve them on their own and not aggregate their team. They try to come to the table with the solution. So and I know some of your team, you're very, very close with, you've known them for most of your life, if not all of your life. And you were able to sit down and have that conversation with them. What did that conversation look like?
Well, like I said, we're in a relationship, right? Both my parents work with us. My friends from junior high, I was a professional saddle bronc rider for, 5 or 6 years in a 10-year period. So one of my first friends doing that, like we've known each other for a long time. So, well, we can be comfortable and trusted, but sometimes that kind of works against the professionalism that you're seeking out, right? Or you feel like it is. You've got these insecurities, So like, I probably didn't discuss as much as I thought I was. And then, like I said, we were in a bad spot when all this came up. So it was kind of like there wasn't any choice at that point. I was fixing to cut salaries. We were doing an entire business restructure on how we were accounting things. I did lay out the plan, or the majority of the plan, to present to them at that meeting. So I wasn't coming and saying, hey, I have this huge problem. I was saying, we have this huge problem. This is the plan. If anyone has anything to add to it, but this is what it's going to look like. Right. So, it was first, I would say the biggest problem was being aware that you have the problem. We did not see every step of this problem coming. We woke up in a problem. Now, if you're responsible and you should be able to see it, but how do you see things like that? You see them with measurements. Well, if you had measurements and you could inspect what you expect and all these things that you're told, you wouldn't be in the problem in the first place. All of those come from problem. And then when you read about that, or someone says something like that, you feel, okay, well, I could be very inviting to problems. And problems are just a chance for a solution, and all of these other cliches. That's not what problems feel like in real life. Things are terrible, And there's lives on the lines. There's life savings on the lines. There's dream homes on the lines. When I realized that a homeowner's house wasn't estimated and spec exactly like they wanted it, I felt compelled to take that hit, because they were not going to get the forever home that they had dreamed about their whole adult life. And now they were retiring and building their forever home, and they had planned it to achieve the last 10 years. I felt very compelled to give them that. And I wore it as a badge of honor. Like, I stood behind my word and made sure you got these cabinets to your 12-foot ceilings, even though we never talked about that. It was just in some random picture. Right. But what a real business leader would need to do is have the hard conversation, discuss what was spec'd out, what was not spec'd out, and not say yes to everything. It was even worse, because I was looking at it like I was doing a good thing, when really I was forfeiting the stability of my business, and therefore how many lives was I affecting on my side, So it was easy to make it look like a good thing until, the numbers are the numbers. And thankfully, like, I started with a financial background. Like, the numbers are where I would like to be. I did not start as a project manager. I didn't start as a builder. I started as a financial person. And not a very experienced financial person, but that's where my interests were, So when you start digging into the numbers, you're going to find it. I would think that it would be harder to hide something from a forensic accountant than it would be like a drug dog. They can find anything that you've ever done by looking through your numbers and books that you didn't even know you were keeping up with.
Yes.
When those problems showed up, and there was no getting away from it, but it also cleared up the plan of how to move forward a little bit better, because you could very realistically see where the problems were.
So is this the point that Profit First came into the picture?
Yes. Yeah. Profit First. So you suggested Profit First and Building a Story Brand. And I read those two books, and they may be two of the most important books that I ever read. It doesn't mean that they're going to be two of the most important books that anyone else reads. It's just the place that I was living in that moment. And I had a lot of good advice, and I did have life help. Like you said in the interview, we were working together. you had introduced me to process maps and processes in general and operating procedures and things of that nature that I could see people that lived and worked in a corporate setting knowing these things and then putting those together for a business that they started themselves. But I just started working as a saddle bronc rider. It was like, okay, well, I can't work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I'm gonna be gone 3 months in the summer. Like, there was no job. My degree was not going to give me a job, And so once I stopped rodeoing and went full time and the business started growing, it was just trial by hire. So I didn't know what any of these things were. I'd never been in a corporate setting. I never even had a job, honestly. I'm not an employee. Like, I never had a W-2 in job. So I wasn't familiar with anything that you were talking about. You were line prior to that. The secrets of successful syndication that the real estate guys put together was when I came to that event, it was and got into that group, I realized, well, hey, there's a whole different level of how business is done. Like working on your business probably wasn't something that I really knew anything about until I was introduced to it in that way. So going through and seeing how your business was structured was just as helpful as the program that you were working me through to help me with mine, because it also gave me examples of how you were doing things, how you were updating me each week. I never had to worry about the financial side. It was in my face all of the time. Anything that adjusted or changed, it was just there. It was just information. I wasn't dead about it. I wasn't, whether it went up or down or anything changed, I was always aware. And so, well, hey, that's what people talk about when they're talking about communication. It's not asking them how they're doing that day, it's just constant information that we don't have to be scared of. We don't have to be worried about. But then when I went into putting that information out there and trying to replicate that for my own business, I didn't have the processes. So it's like, oh, that's great if you have one person in one job, but if you promise someone a weekly update, but you don't have the process in place to put it together a weekly update, they're not getting a weekly update. We're going to get a monthly update. It says weekly on top of it, but it ain't a weekly update. And I bet we've had 15 iterations of a weekly update. So when you're a personal team that's small and you're working with your friends and family and you're giving them a new weekly update every week or a new thing to do or a new idea or, hey, here's this spreadsheet. At some point, you're engrossed in what you're building and what you're changing and what you're updating, but your team is just seeing this haphazard, everything's always changing, nothing's figured out. So you also start losing the confidence on that side. And most of the time, it just comes up as a joke. They made the joke this morning. We have our weekly meetings on Tuesdays. So I just got done with that where we went through every project. We are a relatively small rural-based custom home building company. And there's 3 project managers at the table, 18 active projects. And it just doesn't, we present a lot larger than our team really is because it works so efficiently because of the processes. And I would argue in our area that if you're looking for a custom home, this is probably the safest model to use because it really is the Wild West. Anybody can be a custom home builder tomorrow, much like every other industry that there is, There's a few highly regulated ones, but for the most part, folks go into business and their reputation is what you need to check on as far as, how long or references or something like that. But you do go through a lot of iterations of these changes and adjustments. But back to the profit first, the building a story brand, I really leaned into on the marketing story. It gave me along with other sales trainings and other marketing things like that, really gave me a comfortable place that I like to live in marketing and sales, which is strictly, let's find your problem. Let's work together. If we're a good fit, let's implement the solution. There's nothing about sales for me that is a got ya or like the whole used car salesman vibe is extremely outdated and doesn't work very well. That's very amateur. And building story brand really shows you how to tell that story, or it did for me. In Profit First, as far as my business staying alive long enough to use that information, that had a lot to do with it. Because once for those that don't know, like you said, business envelope accounting, and instead of budgeting for something and using gap accounting and then checking on how it went, like I put that money in those buckets and then we spent from those buckets. And was it was a forced discipline that made sure we were going to keep the solution going.
Wow. I have to just pause and recognize you because I did not know that you went from writing Bronx to you built this company and just the processes and the systems and all of that. Like you are so coachable and just leaning in your ability to learn, like just pick up a book, learn it and apply it. I think that is a skill set that not everyone has. No, let me say this differently. I think it's a skill set that everyone can develop because what you said is when we hit these problems in our business, it's scary. And that's been my experience too. You hit these ceilings, you make these mistakes, you think you're doing it correctly, and then you wake up in a problem and you're like, oh no, I thought I was doing a good job. And it's scary. And I think something that you're not saying, but is just showing up in everything that you're being right now is just this level of character. And your character allowed you to manage the fear and then aggregate resources, i.e. reading, building a story brand, or reading Profit First, or us working together, and then applying it into your business in a way that allowed you to organize to scale it and keep yourself rooted as a leader. But from your like internal vantage point, how did you do that? Like, how can somebody go from, I've never ran a business, I've never started a business, to, oh, I'm throwing into this. I've never even had a W-2 job, and managing that fear and managing all of the question marks in your head that let you still move forward.
No, I didn't start out with any fear. And I've noticed that folks that discuss starting a business start with a lot of fear. I also think that comes from their station in life at the current time. Like I talk to a lot of folks that maybe 40 years old that want to start a business. It's like, well, I didn't have a family. I did, and I was already in a lifestyle of we pay for all of our expenses. We pay for all of our entry fees. If you win, you get paid. But there's zero payment for showing up. There's no payment for showing up. It was also I rode rough stock, so I rode bucking horses, and I'll never forget my dad saying, well, how do you know, like, what are you doing? And I explained measuring rain, and I explained what happened if you measured it wrong. He's like, well, how do you know what each horse is? I was like, well, you just ask the other broncos that had been on it. He's like, well, don't they tell you misinformation? I was like, no, we would never tell each other. And he didn't believe me, right? And it blew his mind. He's like, well, everybody wants to win. It's like, yes, it was extremely competitive and we all wanted to win, but we didn't do it like that, right? It was how well you can do on that animal and how much and what the score is. You didn't want to win because everyone else fell off. You wanted to win because you were successful. And it was this puzzle to figure out and get better at. So what I mean by that is it was extreme ownership, but it was also everyone did help each other out. There was a very high level of abundance thinking in that I didn't recognize at that time. So I don't want to give myself too much credit on the overcoming the fear in the beginning because it was just an unknown, right? Like and I also come from a family that has never had like if a business is a set of systems and that's the asset, then they were never business owners, but everyone in my family seemed like they were self-employed. You know what I mean? So, the having a job wasn't necessarily something that I was pushed to, or that was a culture in our family as much, and in this whole business thing, if you could get it to a level of systems, I was like, man, that's a huge puzzle to solve. And that would be a big win. The fear didn't set in until in order to do business, you're going to do business with people. One of the stupidest things that you hear is it's just business. It's not personal. Everything is personal in business. You know what I mean? Like that's ridiculous. The personal side of the business, the fact that you are you're not doing a $400 job now that maybe you can get out of by just giving them their money back, or maybe a parent or a relative or something like that could get you out of. Once you get out from under everyone's ability to help you, which is everyone's goal, all right? No one starts a business to be like, well, I hope my parents can always bail me out, or a rich uncle or something, you know what I mean? So like when you get and you look and there's no backstop, and you're responsible for people's life, like they can be great friends, they can love the work environment and all that. They still have to be able to pay their bills. They still have to be able to discuss with their spouse, their future and things like that. The business that you're doing with others, as far as your clients, investors are giving you their life savings. People are giving you their life saving for the home that they're building. The longer you are a home builder, which I would assume is much like everything else, the sadder the stories you start hearing and experiencing. And sometimes they're clients that were never your client, right? I've had two different families over the last 9 years have come to me to hire me to build their home. And then when we got to the proposal, we just weren't the builder for them for price or whatever. Well, but they didn't change what they were building. They changed who was building it. And that expectation level they were just agreeing to do whatever. And then the things are really going to cost what they cost, and both of those called me back and said, hey, would you be willing to come to court? Would you be willing to be an expert witness? Things like this. And my answer to both of them in their scenarios, maybe this isn't a good blanket answer, but my answer to both of them was, hey, you need to spend whatever money you're talking about with attorneys on finishing your house. Because if they had the money, they would probably finish your house. It's blood out of turn up things. So the fear comes from not wanting to let people down, not wanting to destroy people's lives, or at least feel like you did. I don't know that we have that much control. I think that's a little arrogant that we could be that powerful, but it's still going to be a hit on your reputation. It's still going to suck to go through. And the stories are just so prevalent in every industry, but especially home building. I say that it's like being a home builder is like standing in one of those wind tunnels with money blowing all around you, and you can keep some of it, right? Because there's just so much money that you give to a builder, and it's so little that they keep as a business. You run their business extremely lean and based on volume, but custom doesn't do volume well. So there's a lot that's industry specific with that. But yeah, the fear wasn't something to overcome in the beginning to get started. It was something that set in a way once it was too late. And then it was just, I don't know. I guess you could stop or run away, but you have to honor those commitments. And the only way to do that is through education. You're not going to find a solution in the same bucket that you created a problem.
What's that saying? The same level of thinking that created the problem won't solve it.
Yeah, exactly. And so unless you just did something on purpose, or wrong, like maliciously wrong, you got to go out and find that information. And it's not easy. It's not like, well, okay, well, I'm ready to go find the information now. I'll start reading. Like reading is even a learned skill. I wasn't real high on college. I have a college degree. It's in banking and financial institutions and finance. And I just never saw myself using any of it, right? I got a really good start to Excel, and a banking professor taught me 10 minutes early is on time is late. Those were the two things that I would admit that I got from college in the early days. But in construction specifically, many of my contractors don't even know how to use an email. Like you get handwritten or screenshots from a text message or something like that. And it's just, at some point, that would have been a huge feeling to overcome if I didn't know how to spell words correctly, or if my vocabulary was extremely limited, or I didn't know how to read and comprehend information and put it out. Like before I read a book, I even put together a sheet on kind of how I'm going to read it, right? If it's a book that I'm trying to get information out of, as far as like a study guide. And I would say that those are learned skills, and I probably did get a lot more benefit out of being forced to sit into school longer than I gave it credit for right out. Because if you're going into business for yourself and spelling is hard for you, then that next ceiling's going to be tough. I know they're spell check, but you don't know.
Okay. So I am so proud of your journey. Okay. So let's just recap. You hit the ceiling. You overcame that fear, rallied your team and your troops, set a new plan using Profit First, which is the envelope system. So probably in the beginning, you set up maybe 5 accounts because that's standard. And then over time, you hit another ceiling and you learned something about yourself when you hit that ceiling, which is the type of leader or manager you want it to be. And when you hit that ceiling, you went back to your Profit First framework and adjusted your comp plan.
Yes, I think it might go back to not having a lot of experience as an employee, that I don't manage employees very well. I don't think that I do, at least. And a lot of criticism on managing employees that I was receiving, I really didn't know how to do any better. I had some people that know me pretty close hand me management books, and there were, inspect what you expect. I get it. Check in on folks, all of that. I really wanted self-starters. I really, when I'm talking with entrepreneurs, when I'm hanging out with them, that is where I like to live. Those are the types of people that I like to be around. I had no idea about that. Your dad actually, I've heard him say something similar about how he designed the business that he was doing in a way to be around the people, because that was a kind of a similar idea. And when I heard that, it was almost like, oh, it's okay to be like this. Like, it's okay to think like that. So I leaned into that a little bit more and said, well, if that's the type, and me and you spent a lot of time with roles, right people on the right bus in the right seats. So trying to figure that out, and it's been a long time. Like, it's still an iterative process, right? I'm not saying it's ever done, but it's been a long time building that into bringing everybody on board. But I shifted everything somewhere along the way to the mindset of, instead of training and coming up with ways to train others and ways to scale employees, I would like to create an environment, a culture that the people that want to live like this want to come to. So Profit First was a kind of a good avenue to that, because for those that don't know, Profit First is a percentage-based system, right? So as soon as the money comes into income, it gets divvied out to other accounts based on a percentage, which can be tough. You know, the first half of the book, I think, is he's killing excuses on why you can't do it. So you can do it. I mean, I'm to do this if I would, but it is tough. Your percentages are not going to be right the first time or 8 times or however. Maybe I'm just a slow learner with percentages, but it's a constant adjustment and checking in on things. Well, when you go kind of heavy into it, it was like, hey, this is a great idea, which visionaries are prone to do. And if you don't have an integrator kind of blowing you up, you just word vomit all this shit to your team. So like, it's like, I'm going to give you all this. Well, now you're having to step back on that. You go, well, hey, I was wrong on my math for a time. And it's always wrong to their detriment, right? You're always on the pullback from when you first start, because I don't know any business owners that are like super greedy, want everything for themselves. Most problem with business owners are they're giving too much away. And so you give away to those teams and you put everything in their hands. And then you have to sit down and say, hey, I said that this was a process. I said that we were working through it. We're restructuring. This is why. Another thing is, like, I am extremely transparent as a person. I don't like the hard conversations that might not show up, but they show up 10% of the time. If I make a mistake, it was a mistake, and I can usually just tell you, hey, this was my mistake, without really being, too fearful of why that mistake was made, because I am going to lean into the transparency of everything. So it made sense to me to say, hey, here's how much I have budgeted for project management. Here's what I budgeted for. As long as we don't need to change that budget, it's yours. It kept me from having to come up with bonuses or pay people differently based on how well of a job they were doing, which how do you know that if you don't have measurements? And if measurements are tied to payment plans, then they need to be expressly outlined so that everybody knows where they stand and they can expect and plan their lives around, right? I've never worked in this environment, but I'm familiar with like sales commission compensations. If you reach this thing, this changes and all of that. When those things are successful, they're normally pretty large brands that I've seen. When it's smaller and it's not all completely built out yet, a lot of times if you're going to follow that model, you're going to make some empty promises along the way, and you have to be able to own those. So I really like the idea of just, hey, this is what I have to give you. You can have all of it. And so our entire business is compensation based, which salespeople are familiar with, by the way. Salespeople are used to commissions. They're used to their salary paychecks, not mean salary paychecks, but being draws against commissions that they would earn. You don't have a problem explaining this to commission based industry people. When you talk to a salaried employee and you tell them this, there is a full level of fear that sets in, and of it being unfamiliar and what's happening. And it did involve a lot of trust. And so in order to get it built off of the ground, my team worked with me to trust me that we were going to make sure it was all okay, but then also work with me as we adjusted it. I would say that it's funny because you're kind of getting back to the employee versus the business owner's mindset here, whereas one employee will tell you, well, hey, I work over here and I get a paycheck no matter what. If I go over here with you, I may get paid better based on production because that's the dream. But the what if is, what if we're not producing? Or what if it's not my fault? What if you're not selling enough for me to produce that? What if the market turns and no one's building houses? Okay, and then my real life example of that when I was talking to someone and having that conversation was, so you think that the builder that you're working for right now is going to continue to pay your salary for how long with no business coming in? Like if it's not coming in, it's not going out. Like where is this money coming from? And you can see folks have that thought for the first time ever of, yeah, how do I get paid? Like how is this it coming in this order? But it's more common than the other, I would say, is folks not really thinking about where their paycheck comes from. It all comes from the same place. It's all the same exact structure, whether you're getting shown the structure or not, whether you can see it or whether it's set up like that or whether you're actually getting compensated like that. You are being budgeted for and you are being given part of that budget. Most of the time it is, if there's a deficit in that budgeting, you get laid off for whatever reason. And then if there's extra in that budgeting, it's a bonus to the business owner, and they get to bonus it out and pay it off however they want. And so there are less expensive versions to do this. And I would say that would probably be the biggest pushback. If someone's listening going, well, yeah, but you're always paying out in that way as much as possible, but it brings in a certain kind of person to do that work and to feel that ownership. And it created our culture for us, I think, is what you kind of alluded to. And the thing that I was missing on my management skills, that structure kind of stepped in and helped me out there. Mm-hmm. If you're not quite producing as much as the person next to you, you're getting what you're producing. It doesn't have to be a problem for me, right? If I had a finite, like say I can only have X amount of people in my office or something like that, I could see versions of it. But if I have more work than I have project managers for, then I could always add project managers if my processes and my systems are strong enough. So if one guy does 25% of what the other guy does and he's happy with it, why would I not be? Right? Because he's still producing, the work is still at the same level. And the next step that we would have to discuss past this, we're kind of talking about the profit first and the model of that compensation. But if your processes and your systems are not organized properly, then no way of compensation plans can help them, right? You still have to be able to produce like you were there without being there in order to scale, regardless of how you do that side or how you manage. It would just fit my level of management And that was the way for me to express my culture throughout my team without writing it into a paragraph and trying to talk everybody into believing it.
Yeah. So you're hitting a ceiling. You are adjusting using a financial model. Really, Profit First is a financial model or a cash tracking system that encourages a financial model. And then you are using the compensation to drive behavior, which there's this saying that community drives behavior, and all a company really is a group of people in a community. So when you change the compensation plan or adjust the compensation plan, you're driving behavior and you're encouraging ownership. So instead of creating ownership by crusading a movement, you're doing both at the same time. You have this movement of you want to be an amazing custom home builder, and you have this building the story brand mission that you've created. But in parallel to that, you're actually incentivizing the behavior of the team members who are making that vision a reality with the compensation plan. And you're giving kind of choose your own adventure. If you're happy making 25%, great. If you want to make 50%, that's there for you too. And I, as a leader, am going to make sure that there's processes and systems and accountability and communication in place for everybody to thrive in this environment and in a way that I want to be. One of the things that you've said is maybe in a different model, you could squeeze out more profit margin. And I have a lot of people who come to me and say, I just want peace of mind. I'm trapped in my business. I'm working around the clock. I am burnt out. I am tired of managing people. How much will it cost me just to get peace of mind? And what you've done with your compensation model and your financial model and implementing Profit First is you've actually structured your way into peace of mind.
Yes. And one of my best friends called me probably 3 or 4 years ago. Time flies, it might have been longer than that. But he said, everybody wants to, I just want to be happy or go do whatever makes you happy. Or he said, so many of these sayings are built around happiness. He goes, what I realized was chasing happiness, you're not always going to be happy. Like, I love what I do and I don't want to change it tomorrow, but not every day is a good day. He said, so if I will constantly look for peace, if I would change that word happy to peace and always protect my peace, then I'm there to do that thing. And that shifted a mindset for me. It's just like being healthy. Like if you're not there, you can't help anybody. You can't help someone from a weakened position. So I have always been real heavy on protecting peace. And so you nailed it. And I searched out something that could be peaceful and therefore productive.
Mm-hmm. What's your definition of success?
Oh, I don't have that outlined very concisely, but I would admit to being successful. It's not a financial goal. It's not even a comfortability goal. Something in us as humans, we're always seeking more. I think that can be okay as long as it's done in a healthy way. If we're grateful enough, then it's okay to always be seeking more as long as we're okay with what we already have. I want to protect my immediate relationships with my family foremost, for sure. I can't do anything if something's wrong there. I talk to folks that are in business or doing something like if I am partnering with you on a business and I find out that you're having real family struggles, then I want to focus on how to help with those family struggles or what those look like for you personally or how willing you are to fix before we ever think about business. Because it can be something that people bury themselves off into very easily and then just I'll fix everything else when I'm making a bunch of money or when I sell my business or when this other thing happens. And there's no way that that's going to happen. It has not been my experience that anything like that happens. So I am really, really happy and at peace with where my relationships with my wife and my kids and my immediate family members are. And then now it extends out to my friends, changing this all around and making it to where, like, hey, we're a bunch of friends and family working together. That could be great, but it could also be a struggle as well. Getting that back to where we could be friends and family working together, trust each other, be transparent, know what's going on, and all still be at peace and be here because we wanted to be here. That was really important as well. So I wouldn't, I don't know how to answer that question, but I would lean the definition of success on measuring your peace. And if you're high and you're fulfilled in that, then because when I came, when part of the information and the guidance that I was seeking when I found you, your family, the organizations that y'all have built and been a part of, I was looking to change directions, right? Like there was something about this industry that I just could not get a grasp on, and I was not feeling comfortable with it, and I was looking for a change. It was not being comfortable and familiar with business that was my problem. Once I saw examples of how you're supposed to do this, or it is a direction of how you're supposed to do this, right? Then I got way more rejuvenated on this business that I've already built a lot of. It's like, well, hey, I have this entire asset over here that I'm talking about walking away from and starting from scratch. Why? Like, why not lean into this? And then even marry those if they're ancillary businesses. But I know builders that stopped being builders to go be truckers, and then stopped being truckers to go back to being builders. And it's like, man, whatever the flip flop there was, I don't think they had a good grasp on it. So I would say that for me, the definition of success is really going to focus around that piece and just making sure that like we're here for this long, like we're extremely short blip in the radar. We're very insignificant as far as all of the people in the world and all of the things being done. And that's just our little place in time. If you look at it in comparison in history, it's just like, I don't have this overwhelming desire to be remembered or for everybody to know me or anything like that. It's just, I want the people that I'm around and the things that we're doing to be worth our time, So I'm kind of in this, between this, legacy thing of not really caring about that as much, and this, we want to make sure we're good thing, that I think everybody is, kind of in some version of that.
It resonates so much because I used to think of legacy more as like mindset, money, mansions, that type of thing. And I think of legacy more now like family and connections and our dinner tables. And my father's successful in business, but my mother created memories around there. And never the things that I think are rooted in your heart.
My wife does have a business, and she does really enjoy what she does, and she has a lot of passion behind it, and she has a great following and reputation. But she is not scared for it to be the size of it that it is, and for that to be what it is. She, is going to make sure that she puts out quality things that she wants out in the world. As if I'm going to put my name on it, it's going to be out there. But she does not mind taking 4 days off to hang out with our kids. And I'm not in a position to be able to do that. Now, we do take a lot of time off to do family things, but she's probably more of the driver behind that. So the time that I take and I do, she makes sure that's balanced for our family. And then that's where I get my peace from, so that I can go do whatever I can do. So I don't know how you would do it without that partnership. If you have, I guess if you were alone, maybe you could do it without that partnership. But if you have a partner, but not the partnership, I don't know that you get that done.
I think what you're saying is so valid in just having roots. And this being the rooted founder, which something I am very much an advocate for, is the infrastructure that allows us to sprout up and plant seeds and grow our businesses and do things is because we have deep roots. We have deep family roots. We're rooted in structure, in systems, and processing, and communication. And I think that if measured, you said if you could measure success, you'd measure it by peace. And my definition of success is inner congruence, which essentially is the same thing as peace, is to be in alignment and then make decisions from that place of alignment, because it doesn't matter. You can't sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. It's not a fair trade. And sometimes, like to your point, you're only here for a small amount of time. You may not have enough time to make up what you think you just sacrificed. So I love your story. And you're going to say something.
Well, I was going to say, like, if you looked at two neighborhoods and one was a very wealthy neighborhood and one was a very poor neighborhood financially, I think it's this illusion that if you could just go hang out with successful people, that you could be successful. But there's not an entry fee to that neighborhood. There's not we only hang out with people that make similar amounts than us. It happens like that, but that's a symptom, right? It's a certain culture, a certain character, a certain work ethic is going to get one thing and the other is going to get the other. And you're going to spend time around those similar people because that's who each other wants to be around, whether they're doing it on purpose or not. So I believe that it's really about culture and character and who you are and what you do. And then those other things just happen, and that's the group that you land in. I don't think there's any way that if you could pretend to have a bunch of money for a short period of time that you could just automatically jump into a different section, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think Jim Rohn says, set out to make $1 million, not for the $1 million, but who you have to become in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's your character. It's who you are. It's choosing to eat the salad over the pizza. It's choosing to work out when you could sleep in. It's choosing to have the pink elephant hard conversation when it's easier to run and hide. It's all of those little things that we do every single day, and we're not perfect. There's times when I should have had conversations and I didn't. There's times that I didn't work out when I should have. Like, it's not about perfection. It's about that commitment to developing that muscle of grit, of resilience, of ownership that changes which neighborhood you're in and who you end up hanging around.
Right. You're not going to find that one great client that's going to make your business. You're going to make your business and find that great client, because that's what they're looking for. That's who they're going to do business with.
Yes. Oh, I just love connecting with you. It's been so long, and I'm so proud of the growth journey you've been on and who you've become as a leader to get there as well, and your amazing, beautiful family. So it was a pleasure having you on The Rooted Founder, and I am going to be cheering for you with all that you have coming up in this 2025 and beyond.
Well, thank you so much for having me off. Been a huge part of anything that I've seeked out to figure out how to do and to grow. So I would also like to say that the Rooted Founder, Organized to Scale, you have a way of choosing a name that you don't have to say anything else. It explains exactly what you're doing. It's not how you come up with that.
What this Organized to Scale that I think I did come up with, but my sister actually came up with the Rooted Founder for me because I had stumbled and forgotten who I was. And she said, this is who you are.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Everyone who's listening, I hope that this blesses you and encourages you to build something that brings you peace. And in a way that I think Profit First can help with, structure, systems, all of those things. But build something that can help you build meaningful conversations around your dinner table and help you scale in ways that are impactful to your heart and soul. Cheers, y'all.